Oh, hi. I didn't see you there. Thanks for joining us here on the Rockpile Report podcast. I was just about to fix myself a glass of something. Chris, do you want to maybe help me here with our guests? Can you maybe give me something to put in my glass that
all you got?
This is awkward.
Yeah. Well, all you got to do is reach down below in the loins there in the mouth of that coffee table, and you'll find yourself a bourbon to pour yourself if you reach down there. I got this week. Four Roses, OBSK. This is my fourth Four Roses single barrel that I have.
If I look closely enough, I believe that this is the bullet that was brought to us by a Mr. Mike Crow.
Yes.
Mike Crow, all the way from Tampa, Florida, came up, hung out with us before the Tampa Bay game. What a time to be alive. Gentlemen, we're here. I'm going to put the bleach away, and instead I'm going to pour myself a little bit of this bourbon from Bullet Single Barrel. I have a dog named Bullet. I have a dog named Bullet, and I have a football team that drives me absolutely crazy. Guys, welcome to the Rockpile Report. I'm your host, Bill season ticket holder Drew Gear. That's my producer, Chris Kruger, and this was the bleach that I was threatening to pour a glass of before the podcast started. Guys, I got to fill my hand. I got to grab a drink, and I want to start this with a quote. To quote the late, great Delano Roosevelt,
not Colonel Sanders.
The only limit to our realization of tomorrow will be our doubts of today. And I feel like we all collectively have to drink to that. I have sat through decades of terrible Bills performances. Some real disasters. I have both been so angry and so happy that I couldn't sleep after Bills games. I've had some really great and some really terrible times. And I feel like we as a fan base have had some of the most roller coaster seasons since, 2017. Since Sean McDermott showed up and pulled us out of the drought, and we gained Josh Allen as a quarterback, and we had all these things that went right for us. I feel like our lives have been something of a sports roller coaster with some of the highest highs and also some of the most devastating lows that you can feel, if only because you had expectations, because you had hope. Lately, Chris, I don't know. I feel like I'm starting to get a sense of apathy.
Makes sense.
How do you guys feel? Those of you in the comments who are sitting here walking around, does anybody else remember that kid from Buffalo that got internet famous for drinking bleach? That's awesome.
Could have been you.
Dave Gilbert.
I'll tell you, I watched that game in full, second half down here in the basement, and 4th and 27 happens, and I go, I'm like, they're really gonna fucking pull this off. You don't give up 4th and 27 and win a game. And then when that interception happened, I was this close to throwing the remote against the wall.
Old school spaz,
yes.
Old school little kid video game spaz.
Yeah, but that's
like, hey, Madden just cheated me. And I know they cheated me because the ball went through my receiver's body into the hands of the safety, and I took that controller and I spiked it off the wall.
But this household is also littered with TCL Roku TVs, and if you leave a remote upstairs in the wild, one of my dogs will chew the shit out of it. So I knew I had backup remotes. Like, I could just break this. No problem. I'll just go upstairs and get another one.
Did you break it?
No, I threw it at the couch, though.
See?
I was mad, but I didn't want to wake Jessica up because I knew she was sleeping right above me. So I just threw the remote at the couch.
First of all, I'm happy you finally understand where my love affair with wicker furniture came from.
Jeremy Rogers just brought that up in the chat.
My wicker furniture, Chris. You're learning.
We need to bring back wicker furniture.
I'll do it.
There are for those that follow on Twitter, there are GIFs that I have made of Drew destroying wicker. That's probably back from the 16, 17, a little bit of 18 years.
A little bit of 18 in there. So here's what I'll say. Thursday night was one of the first times in my entire adult life I shut a Bills game off and went to bed when the Bills were still within a single score. Down by 4, but it felt like 44. And when Shakir fumbled the ball, like this, just a few plays after yet another Bills player was walked off the field with an injury, I decided I just couldn't take it anymore. I don't care. I'm going to sleep. I've been awake. I went out hunting with my brother. I've been up since 3 o'clock in the morning. I have to drive to Toronto with my family in the morning. You know what? I don't need this. And I got up and I went to bed. And I remember my wife saying to me as I was leaving the room, "Hey, you can still get the game on the TV upstairs in our bedroom." And I was like, "Nah, I won't be needing that." And I went upstairs and I shut my phone off and put it on the charger and I went to sleep. And when I woke up in the morning, I felt pretty vindicated, considering everything I had on my plate that day. Driving 3 hours up to Toronto, being at the Ripley's Aquarium, a lot of city walking with my family. And now that I've had some time to ruminate on it, I saw someone in the comments going, "Hey, back to old school unhinged podcasting." I'm not going to lie. I think I think I feel annoyed more than anything else. So gather around the fire, folks. Gather around the fire with us here for yet another fireside chat, and let's commiserate over our annoyance. Because I'll tell you what, I saw somebody go, "Hey, you know what the thing for the Bills is? They just got to get into the playoffs and they got to get on a heater." And as you saw in the thumbnail for tonight's live show, I made the joke. I was like, "Yeah, well, you know what?" I go, I think technically all of One Bills Drive is currently on a heater. They just sent him a picture of a house fire, and he goes, "Wow, you're dark." I go, "Yeah, where else am I supposed to go? What else am I supposed to do at this point?" I feel the way, even the play clock got injured. Bills DUI, awesome. This game was a disaster from top to bottom. And no, Bryce, Erdwan, I did not have any luck. In fact, I sat out in this tree stand in the dark and the cold, and I heard a deer walk by in the dark, or at least I saw him kind of on this ridge that I knew I couldn't shoot at because it's not safe. And then I didn't see another animal other than really loud squirrels for the entire day. Squirrels, Chris, I know you don't know we have any frame of reference for this, but when you're out in a tree stand and the forest is silent, squirrels sound like bears. And there's 3 of them wrestling around in the leaves. There was no way. There's no way I could focus on anything.
Well, the thing is, you didn't get any deer. My cousins were in, that's why I had to do Tuesday last week, usually Monday for a Thursday night game. My cousins were in town because they go hunting. You didn't get anything. My cousins didn't get anything. I don't go hunting, and I got 1 deer.
Guys, for those of you who don't know, Chris got his car rammed into by a deer, and he is on the leaderboard before me. Hours in tree stands. Chris is somehow on the leaderboard ahead of me.
I got T-boned by a deer 2 weeks ago. Allegedly, tomorrow I can go get my car. It was $3,800 worth of damage. The deer ran in right into the hinge of my driver's side door. If I was going 3 miles an hour faster, that deer would have came right through the driver's side window.
It's amazing. Somehow Chris is on the leaderboard before me or my brother, who's been out there. He's been sitting. He does bow hunting. He's been out there for months. He's been out there for a month and a half. You have more deer than he does. You know who doesn't have any game, or who at least is hurting in the win column, is the Buffalo Bills. And I want to talk to you about the problem with culture. Culture really is a double-edged sword. It can be the thing that saves you. It can also be the thing that kills you. And the Bills, make no doubt about it, they have a culture problem. I want to talk about that. The culture problem that the Bills have is that it's so much different from what a lot of other franchises in the NFL have to deal with today. The Bills are not the Chiefs in that, like, the Chiefs are tied, I think, second in the NFL with 7 different players arrested since 2020. And they clearly lack any sort of qualifying control from a character of personnel standpoint. You know, they live and die at the mantle of winning means everything, and we don't care what types of people share this organization with us. Okay? Those are the Kansas City Chiefs. They have a little bit of a culture problem. And you're watching some of it pop up this year when you're watching players quit on plays and you're watching and you go, oh, okay, well, that makes sense because this is what you've cultivated. We're also not the Miami Dolphins, who between the GM who kept his job for 9 years despite not winning a playoff game, or the star wide receiver who publicly told reporters, nah, I'm not going to be here next year. Because he was frustrated about a loss, it oozes a lack of accountability. And it's reflected in their preparation and ultimately the Miami Dolphins results. That's a culture problem. You have a head coach who came in trying to be cool with his capris and his, hey, man, I'm going to say a lot of weird stuff at the microphone, but then he didn't win. And now it's just awkward. We're also not the Raiders or the Browns, who have so much dysfunction taking place simultaneously at multiple levels of the organization, you don't know where to point the finger. You could tear down the entire front office of both of those franchises and start over with Chris and I, or other rookie front office members. You could take an AGM, you could take a non-GM and stick them in that role and start over with first-time executives and rebuild the entire roster. And I don't think anyone would be able to recognize a difference between who the Raiders and Browns are now and what they would be if you did that. We don't have those problems. And so that's great, Chris. Isn't it fun to not be a tire fire on national television every week?
Yeah, there's a reason Cleveland is still the mistake on the lake. We're not in a position to reclaim that title.
No. Cleveland has run away with this. When you talk about culture and the value of culture, the Bills are a franchise that crawled out of the proverbial wasteland of mediocrity on the back of a head coach who built a culture of real, tangible accountability where previously there was nothing. Nothing but tough talk from a bloviator and a cranky offensive line coach who thought 9 wins should have come with a standing ovation. That's what the Buffalo Bills were. Doug Marrone thought that winning 9 games we should have given him the key to the city. And Rex Ryan showed up acting as though he had already won a playoff bid. And then when it didn't land, didn't really have any answers.
Well, he did win an offseason.
Remember, that was the year of the off-the-bus starters? Between GM and head coach, Doug Whaley and Rex Ryan deserved each other.
Was that off-the-bus starters and football's not meant to be played by humans?
You can't say those two things in a 1-year span and keep your job, Doug Whaley. There was a time when that was enough, right? Just being in the conversation, getting better, being what Sean McDermott was in 2017 was always looked at as the bar. And people said, I just want that. And there's a segment of the fan base that is happy with enough. And I'm not going to sit here and tell you that they're wrong. Occasional trips to the playoffs, national attention after decades of being talked about like you're a joke, a renewal of the pride that you felt in telling other people that you're a diehard Buffalo Bills fan, or that you're a season ticket holder, or that you travel in for a couple games a year. Having pride about this franchise instead of being the butt of a joke. Some people are just happy with that. And I'm not here to piss in their cornflakes and tell you that you're wrong if that's where you live. If that's where you've set the bar and you're content with that, not only do I not want to take the piss out of you, I wish I could join you, but I can't. I can't for personal reasons, for the fact that my journey with this team personally and how, kind of the way I maybe even mistakenly wove it into my life, I feel it to a degree that's probably a little unhealthy, right? But you wouldn't be here tonight watching the show or listening to this podcast right now in your car on your way to work if you didn't also have a little bit of that too. If the things that I say in these moments didn't resonate with you just a little bit, you wouldn't be here with this You wouldn't be here for it. And I look at this franchise's culture now, built around accountability in terms of players and in terms of some of the staff, but not those at the top. It's become something of a velvet cage. It looks great. It feels good most of the time. And it might also be the reason that we never achieve bigger and greater things. I want to have a talk about accountability. What happens when you build a culture like the Buffalo Bills currently employ? When Brandon Beane and Sean McDermott showed up in 2017, they set the tone for accountability. They came in like Shorzy, and they set the tone. Anybody who didn't work their ass off, buy in, or find a way to fit in, the Sammy Watkins, the Ron Darbys, the Marcel Dariuses, the Reggie Raglins of the world, you all got sent packing. We didn't even care what we got back in exchange. We just needed you not here. And the message that got sent to our players was we would rather play and win, try to win, with guys who bought in and fit our scheme than guys who wouldn't. And they did win. I mean, at least they won enough to make the playoffs 2 out of their first 3 seasons, even before Josh Allen took that Herculean leap and became an NFL superstar. In 2019, Josh Allen was still a fairly pedestrian passer of the football, and the Bills qualified for a second time in 3 years with a sophomore quarterback. That was culture. That was culture on display, and it worked. For a while, depending on where you set the bar. I think those first 3 to 4 years were some of the best coaching that Sean McDermott and his staff have ever accomplished. And we still weren't quite good or complete enough when it mattered. You know, that first time when we lost in 2020, Chris, when we got the absolute shit kicked out of us by the Kansas City Chiefs in that first AFC title game, this team was undermanned, undergunned, weak in the trenches, soft in all the places you can't be when you play a team that's capable of winning a Super Bowl. Now you take a look to where we are today, and I feel like the culture that got us to that place is now doing us just as much disservice as it did good. You look at some of the players that this past offseason we passed up on for no other reason than, well, they might be difficult, right? Oh, this player might be. How about this? C.J. Gardner-Johnson, a safety who got released to the street after training camp at a time when the team already had clear visual evidence that they were going to have trouble at the safety position. Now we know that Taylor Rapp was already injured. They knew Rapp wasn't 100%, and they decided that they did not need help. They allowed their 5th-round pick to languish and never really get a shot to grow into a starting role. And at the same time, you could have negotiated a $650,000 salary that's currently being paid to C.J. Gardner-Johnson to play really good, solid football for the Chicago Bears.
Johnny Utah, back with the super chat. The Bills are the main character in that 80s movie, The Last American Virgin. Or Mark in Fast Times at Ridgemont High.
Damn it. If that analysis is not just sharp, Johnny Utah, it's that kind of thing. Because when you think about the type of decision-making that's going on here, you didn't need a C.J. Gardner-Johnson. You know what you needed, though, was a Jordan Poyer. For the same money. For the same money, you decided you didn't need a guy who's currently a legitimate NFL starter and a high-level athlete. You decided to bring back Jordan Poyer.
Can I give you another one? So you needed to have Landon Jackson, 3rd-round pick. And you needed that, or you could have sent that 3rd-round pick to Pittsburgh for George Pickens.
George Pickens, emotional player with maturity issues. Sound familiar? Emotional wide receiver with maturity issues. But at least we know he's a downfield threat. At least we know he has football acumen. You've watched him be successful before. Maybe that type of player is the exact guy who could use a dose of culture from a contending franchise and a strong coaching staff. Instead of sending that 3rd-round pick and spending the $3.6 million on a 1-year rental with no future commitments, the Bills brought in Elijah Moore and Gabe Davis for the same amount of money for no other reason than familiarity and culture fit. How much do you think that Sean McDermott's relationship with Mike Tomlin, the head coach of Pittsburgh, factored into the decision not to pursue George Pickens?
I mean, I could see it, but I also could see that being how we could get it done with that relationship that they had from William and Mary. Because they're old friends, you could work out a deal. But I bet McDermott didn't want to deal with the headache of George Pickens.
Meanwhile, you look at Jermaine Pratt. Jermaine Pratt, signed by the Raiders after leaving the Bengals. He's immediately snapped up by the AFC South leading Colts. And this is in October he gets cut. And he has been a force for them at linebacker. Pass breakups in every game. Tackles for loss. Just run stops left and right. It's not like he's old. He's 29 years old and costs $1.5 million against the cap. Perfect fit for a 4-3 base defense. But the Bills decided that they would rather stick what they had in Joe Andreessen, the aged Shaq Thompson, and the often injured Balin Spector instead for more money than what that guy would have cost. And then if you want to talk about shooting for the moon, Davante Adams. The front office decided it can't spend the money on an aging veteran who wants to win. A guy who excels versus man coverage at a time when the Bills have some of the worst separation metrics in the NFL. Meanwhile, we're paying double Davante Adams' 2025 cap hit, which is $12 million, for a wide receiver 4 or 5 who can't stay on the field in Curtis Samuel, the third most talented tight end on the field in Dawson Knox, and the jet sweep machine Elijah Moore. Davante Adams' deal has, if you look at it on Spotrac, the way the Rams structured this is that it's a $26 million deal with cap hits spread out over 2 seasons with an out after this year. So they'll buy him out for $14 million. They'll pay the $14 million dead cap charge, and they'll have spent $26 million on a 1-year rental in a year where they could go win a Super Bowl with 2 premier wide receivers. Chris, that sounds like the kind of contract that a GM who's really worth his salt shouldn't have a hard time negotiating, right?
Yeah.
And yet here we are treating an NFL roster like it's the Blues Brothers. Well, other teams have no problem stepping outside their comfort zone and snapping up unfamiliar but talented faces and are profiting from it. This is the problem with reliance on culture. Culture can get you killed because you marry yourself to things that you think are important, and at the same time, they might not be. They might not only not be important, but they also might not bring you success. Jordan Phillips, Jordan Poyer, Balin Spector, Dane Jackson. These are guys that you as a coach and as a GM all deemed replaceable. They're now somehow back on this roster. And it's not the first time they've done it. Joe from Queens, who is the co-host of Pat Moran's podcast, the Talking Bills podcast, tweeted out.
Come on. Pat's a friend. He's talking Buffalo, and he's on Sundays. That's it.
He tweets out, here's how many times the Bills have re-signed the same players. Jordan Phillips has been cut and re-signed to the Bills roster 4 times. Shaq Lawson, now because of this week's announcement, 3 times. Jordan Poyer's been brought back twice. Micah Hyde twice. Josh Norman twice. John Brown twice. AJ Klein has been brought back 3 times. Gabe Davis is back for a second stint. Trey White is back again. These are all players that at some point in time, you as a talent evaluator and a GM decided our team needs to get better. We need to get better and we need to move on from this player. And then you came back and decided that you needed them. That's almost shameful, right? And then, like when push came to shove, you had options and you chose culture and scheme fit, quote unquote, over performance and just youth and upside. Like, Chris, right now, Shaq Lawson's back on the Bills practice squad. And I want you to understand what took place earlier this year. Draymond Jones was an edge player for the Titans. Keon White was an edge player for the Patriots. And Odafe Owe edge player for the Baltimore Ravens. They went for a 5th round pick in trade, a 7th round, and a 7th round pick. I mention them because they're all edge players that were traded for late round picks at a time when Shaq Lawson was still available and free to literally any team that wanted him. Anybody could have gone and picked up a Shaq Lawson at any point in time they felt like they needed him. And instead, some GM said, you know what I would rather do is I would rather throw away a day 3 pick and go get a guy like a Draymond Jones, a Keon White, than try to hire Shaq Lawson off the street. And yet here is the Buffalo Bills saying we know better than the rest of the league, and we're going to bring back a guy on a veteran minimum contract. Like, what are we doing? This is a choice.
Teddy Bandana, the amount of bacteria in the Bills locker room on account of the double dipping must be horrendous.
It's horrendous what this love affair with culture and scheme fit has done to our roster. You have guys here where other teams have decided that we want to get younger and we want to get more athletic, and we're willing to eschew throwaway day 7 picks because I've watched Odafe Away and Keon White get sacks. At a time when nobody thinks Shaq Lawson is employable, you decide you know better. And rather than be in those conversations, you'd rather do this. When you talk about what's right and what's wrong and choices, like the ones that our front office is currently making, one of the things I was taught about choices is that morality, right and wrong, like it's flawed. Because what's considered morally correct and what's not changes every 7 to 10 years. I mean, I'm not going to try to charge up this podcast, but here's what I'll say. One of the examples I always point to. Back in 1950, what you would consider to be morally correct about things like segregation. What's morally and legally correct? Now we can sit here in 2025 and look back on that and go, Jesus Christ, I can't believe we ever thought that was acceptable. That changes. And so you can't look at right and wrong. It's always kind of somewhat in the eyes of the beholder if you try to find what it is like, oh, well, the law book says it's right, so it must be right. Instead, I've been taught that life is nothing but a series of actions and consequences. And what you have to do is you have to make your peace with all the possible outcomes of your choices, good and bad. And if you can live with the outcome either way, you make that choice and you let the cards fall where they might. It's choices and accountability to those choices. So I guess my question is, we're over here making choices, a lot of them, and they don't seem to be paying dividends for the Buffalo Bills. Who's accountable for that? Where's the accountability? You can argue some people have felt accountability. Let's walk it down. The defensive line coach, after last season where the Bills kind of petered out and did not perform well along the defensive line coach Delonte West saw the team hire Ryan Nielsen in the offseason. Remember how excited we were about that, Chris?
Yes.
Ryan Nielsen was going to come in, be a senior advisor to Bobby Babich, and we were going to talk about all this fun stuff. And also, he coached up Trey Hendrickson as a 3rd-round pick, so obviously he has some defensive line acumen. You don't think that was a shot at the defensive line coach, being like, hey, I'm going to bring somebody in the building who's done your job better than you. Do it or else. Offensive line coach Bobby Johnson.
But you're going to bring in a position coach, but not maybe somebody that would challenge Babich.
Well, listen.
Why would you go position coach when you can take the whole fucking pie?
Oh, listen, there's so much here to unpack. Offensive line coach Bobby Johnson fired in 2022 before the team brings back Aaron Kromer because our offensive line was bad. And Aaron Kromer came in and saved the Bills' offensive line. Rightfully so, there was accountability found. Special teams coordinator Heath Farwell. This is one of my favorite stories. Do you guys know he wasn't fired? I'm getting rowdy now on a podcast. I'm going to spill some tea. Heath Farwell was never fired from the Buffalo Bills, but parted ways with the team immediately after the 13 seconds fiasco. I have it on good authority that there was a heated argument that went on until about 1 o'clock in the morning, maybe 1:15 over at One Bills Drive between Heath Farwell, Brandon Beane, and Sean McDermott. In the aftermath of our loss to Kansas City in that just absurd finish to a football game. He was never fired. There was no announcement made. You can Google it. There's no announcement. Hey, Heath Farwell was fired by the Buffalo Bills, but just the same, the next season, he worked for the Jacksonville Jaguars. Chris, doesn't that sound like a guy who quit?
Yeah, it does.
And how much did that decision ultimately, after you read Ty Dunn's reporting, have to do with Heath Farwell?
I mean, a lot. I mean, you're going down a coaching path. Like, how many times?
Yeah, but the 13 seconds fiasco that caused that fight, how much of that was Heath Farwell's fault?
I would say probably zero. I mean, I don't know why you would not listen to your special teams coordinator, and let him do his job in a scenario where special teams is going to matter. Why would you do that?
Wide receiver coach Chad Hall wasn't retained after 2022 because the team failed to develop a single wide receiver outside of Gabe Davis and Stephon Diggs. But also, you could imagine handing him Jamison Crowder, Isaiah McKenzie, and 2 starts worth of Khalil Shakir. What did you give the guy to work with? Chris, your famous cookies analogy. They went to Chad Hall and said, hey, make us some chocolate macadamia nut cookies. Oh, by the way, I have a little bit of flour and 1 egg. Good luck. Sophomore defensive coordinator Bobby Babich lost his autonomy this season as a defensive play caller, just like Leslie Frazier before him back in 2018. And yet, after another season of lackluster run defense that Sean McDermott doesn't seem to have the roster or an answer for. And on the other side of the ball, Sean McDermott has fired 2 different offensive coordinators in his 9-year tenure. Rick Dennison and Ken Dorsey, while also allowing what's his face from Dable to leave when his contract was up.
I mean, obviously, it's a head coaching job. You're going to leave.
But when you think about the guys who got fired, Dennison and Dorsey, you could argue that Brady's done just about as poor of a job this year as either one of them did when you consider the talent level that they had at their disposal. So who does this accountability actually apply to? Brandon Beane has seen multiple members of his cabinet go on to find success elsewhere in the NFL, go find other GM jobs, go find promotions elsewhere outside the organization. Sean McDermott can't develop a coaching tree of his own to save his life. It seems like every single person he fills his staff with flames out or shows their ass right here in front of all of us Bills fans in some way, shape, or form. And yet he's obsessed with the concept of uniformity and culture. Promoting from within. Isn't that why Brady and Babich are our coordinators right now? If it's not that nobody else in the NFL wants to work with him, then isn't it like it must be because he truly believes that they're the best and most qualified, right? Everything that he's done to grow this coaching staff, it brings you to the question, is he capable of selecting and grooming talent that ultimately blossoms and pays dividends for our team? Is he capable of finding an offensive coordinator, Chris, who can be the next Ben Johnson?
He can find a coordinator as long as he doesn't have a pedigree to challenge him for his own job.
And this is the problem. And so there's a quote from FDR. It's a terrible thing to look over your shoulder when you're trying to lead and you find nobody there. Has Sean McDermott lost things?
I think he's losing them.
I mean, whether it's just poor selection, poor evaluation, or a conscious aversion to challenge, Sean McDermott has built bad coaching staffs year over year, and we're paying the price for it as the fan who's sitting here we're shelling out money. We're shelling out bits and pieces of our sanity. For me, my liver. Like Chris, I wonder if we could get a class action lawsuit for liver damage against this football team. Just based on this season alone.
Mark, call in if you know.
I guess the question is, If you can't build a viable staff and you can't self-scout properly, then who holds Sean McDermott accountable? If not the GM or the owner, I don't know, like who is he accountable to? His GM, not the owner, not the star quarterback, where he'd absolutely be without Josh Allen. Sean McDermott is absolutely a defensive coordinator for some Tampa 2 team in the NFC South right now.
I mean, I would put McDermott. McDermott is a coach that if you are just treading water, the Giants with bad coaching hires, McDermott can get you out of the basement as a franchise, but he's not going to get you over the top.
No, not just over the top, but also, what about your GM? Like, this is the problem. You've got a coach like McDermott who needs to be reined in, who needs to be held accountable. What about your GM? This is a guy who slowly built a catalog of flawed draft classes and questionable free agent investments, but none more glaring than the 2025 iteration of this roster that is a lot of last season's weaknesses still present, still plaguing us, and some of them he publicly laughed at, along with some new ones that they didn't prepare for and are not responding too well. A lot of people have taken to social media and they're trying to do the from the free throw line tomahawk dunk on Brandon Beane right now because it's popular. And that's one thing in our fan base. And then what I see is people going, I don't understand the negativity. It's just a bunch of negative fans. It's blah, 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 blah. Okay. How about this? Here's Colin Cowherd's take on the mess that the Buffalo Bills are right now.
I mean, Davis Mills is a pro. I get it. But he engineered 2 long drives, 77, 75 yards. My eyes tell me, I watched that game. You watch that game. Texans have better players. There's 7 or 8 great rosters in this league. Buffalo's not one of them. They're not one of them. I mean, at D-line, wide receiver, and corner, Houston's much better. It's not close. I don't want to hear that Ed Oliver's hurt. It's the NFL. Or that Dalton Kincaid's not available. You have 2 other tight ends. Or that Keon Coleman, the young receiver's a bit immature. Well, it's a league full of young guys. The Texans were missing their quarterback. And the Bills are getting into a really bad habit of losing to average quarterbacks. Their last 3 losses are to Tua, Michael Penix, and Davis Mills. And I know he's a pro, but Davis Mills should not be beating Josh Allen. I don't want to see Chef Boyardee out cooking Bobby Flay ever under any circumstances, period.
There you go, Colin Cowherd, FS1, the herd.
That's been stuck in my craw since I heard it. Chef Boyardee outcooked Bobby Flay this week. A league MVP got beaten by a giraffe in a Texans uniform. And we have to sit here and swallow that. We as fans have to absorb that and accept it as reality. And it's frustrating. It's frustrating because Cowherd's right. What is this roster? What is Taron Johnson catching Woody Marks, one of the smallest running backs in the NFL, behind the line of scrimmage by 3 yards and getting dragged for 5? You not only paid that guy $9 million for this year, but then you restructured his contract so that he's stuck here next year. And then he goes on and has that play. And I go, this is why we fail. There's no lie in what Colin Cowherd says. And it's coming from someone who has no bias against Buffalo or Beane or McDermott or Josh Allen. Someone who's not a hater and, in fact, defends Josh and the Bills quite a bit. It's not just the haters anymore who are mad about the state of the Buffalo Bills or frustrated. It's not the internet trolls. It's not the Nick Wrights of the world. It's literally anybody with eyeballs and a little bit of football acumen. They see a poorly contrived mess. Josh Allen entering the 4th quarter of Thursday's game had run more actual yards than any wide receiver on the team. Mostly scrambling for his life against 4-man pressure that a coordinator had no plan for. One of the better pass protecting offensive lines in the league gave up 8 sacks because there was no one open and there was no plays to be made on the back end on an alarming number of his dropbacks. And the defense couldn't muster any physicality until the Texans' run game had already done enough damage to win the game. I don't know. And the architect of that is a GM who now, I want this to sink in with some of you who are here watching this live, and I want to know what your thoughts about this in the comments, because nobody has said this on Twitter. No one said it on a podcast, and I want you to hear it from my mouth for the first time, even through my terrible teeth. With the firing of Chris Grier, Sean McDermott and Brandon Beane are the brain trust of a football team who, as head coach and GM, will now hold the record for the longest NFL tenure in those positions. Now, Brandon Beane specifically, without a Super Bowl appearance. Chris, do you know that no GM has ever seen 10 years in his job without at least going to one Super Bowl?
That checks out.
Like the Browns. So the Brown family, they're in Cincinnati. They're the only ones who have held their job, but they own the team and are the GM, so that doesn't count. The only GM in the NFL ever to make it to 10 years without ever seeing a Super Bowl and still getting to keep their jobs is going to be Brandon Beane this next offseason. As fans, what kind of confidence and what kind of message does that send to you about the culture of this team? Oh, hey, we can lose and we can build shitty rosters and we can mismanage the cap. Hey, guys, here's a funny thing. For all of you who think like, well, you know, you just have to suffer a little pain and then in the future. Do you know the Rams are going to have not only are they now the favorites to win the Super Bowl, also they're going to have $96 million in cap space next year. And they're going to have 2 first-round draft picks. And they're probably already like worlds ahead in terms of roster construction of where the Buffalo Bills are. And yet Sean McDermott flat out said, I don't want to be that team. Like I never want to gamble. Because you talk about culture, a culture of just, hey, we want to be risk avoidant. Okay, well, your culture of risk avoidance has led you to a place where you now got lapped. You got lapped by other football teams. So while you never made a Super Bowl because you guys were being pragmatic, other teams gambled and won. And their gambles paid off, and now they've passed you. And now you have to sit here and go into 2026 with $8 million in cap space and try to figure out how to put together a roster again. Meanwhile, the New England Patriots, who are already 3 games better than you in the AFC, they're going to get better because they're going to spend more money and they're going to bring in more free agents. And guess what? Their quarterback isn't making $50 million a year yet. We're in for some rough. I mean, guys, this is going to be cold lotion for Buffalo Bills fans for the next decade because of what this culture has wrought. And so the same culture that brought us to the national forefront, gave us what we have, gave us our moment in the sun, is the same reason that we'll never see success. And that's a hell of a thing to try to reconcile. It's a hell of a thing to try to reconcile in your head as a sports fan, where you go, listen, I emotionally am invested, but I also kind of live and die by the way this team moves each week. The highs and the lows, I feel every single one of them. That's our fan base. And unfortunately, this team has decided that culture and consistency and, Chris, a lack of pressure from anyone to change that has led us to this place. Like, when I think about it, who builds a team like this? Like, short of like there's only a couple reasons that you operate a team like this. It's because you're more concerned with padding your wallet than you are padding the win column. And it feels like that's where the Buffalo Bills have landed. And I'm hoping that people can finally see this for what it is. I hate it. I hate every second of it. And it's why I went to bed early the other night. our velvet cage feels pretty cushy, but it's suffocating. And the way you'll receive everything I just talked about probably is predicated upon whether or not you think things are as bad as they feel, or if you're more of a glass half empty or a glass half full kind of person. Myself, I'm more of a realist. And so in that way, here's one of my favorite demotivational posters of all time. Just kind of underscoring where I think the Buffalo Bills actually sit. I'm the guy on the far right.
It is piss.
It is piss. It's all piss. And it's just, I see in the comments, could the new minority owners have an impact now that it isn't just Terry? Maybe. And maybe that becomes what we as Bills fans have to hope for. Is that these minority owners that Terry Pegula was so broke he had to bring in play a role in reshaping what the culture of this franchise is. Because right now what I see is a team that's so scared to move on from what it's familiar with that it will always lose. They will always die on the hill of, well, we had to have Shaq Lawson and we had to bring back Jordan Poyer. And they're like, well, what about Gardner Johnson? They go, well, we don't know anything about him. We heard he's hard to work with. Who cares? Do you want to win football games? They have to break this. And this comes from not just players, but from coordinators. Hey, there's a coordinator who's looking for work. I heard he's difficult and sometimes he might challenge you, Sean McDermott, but you're the head coach. You're the CEO of this business. You need to make it work. If you want your offense to be successful, you have to sometimes take a maverick under your wing and go, look, man, I run the show, but I will allow you to shine so that you can someday be a head coach yourself. That has to happen or this thing will die. I just don't know where it goes from here because right now it really is piss. Now, with that in mind, I've given you guys the doom and gloom. And, Johnny Utah, listening to the training camp hype for Coleman and Trey White gave me the Minister of Truth vibes, 1984 vibes. Not good. It's the feeling of impending doom when a regime is in full propaganda stage. Exactly. Why did they hide? Why did they hide Keon Coleman from the Hard Knocks crew? Why was he not a facet of that show at all? Oh, it's because all this pomp and circumstance we were hearing about him by the media probably. Chris, how much of that was conflated?
I would say he didn't make the cut for Hard Knocks because he wasn't there. He wasn't on time for filming. We need to do a pre-production meeting about episode 2 for HBO Hard Knocks. We're going to focus in on Keon Coleman. Where is he? Oh, he's at that creamery getting ice cream in Rochester. Or he's at Barbill East getting wings. He's not present.
I can't pronounce this Polish name in the comments, but Mitchell goes, I only have Genesee 12 horse at the moment. It might be piss. I'm not sure. Your glass is definitely full of piss, sir. But don't worry because we are the pettiest, hardest drinking Bills podcast. And I'm
going to say out here. I'm taking a shot.
Okay.
I'm taking a shot. Wojciech.
Nope.
Mitchell Wojciech.
You never pronounce the J's. That's not how Polish works.
I mean, Jessica was married to a Polak, so that's my only guess. Mitchell will let us know if we're right or if I'm right.
Chris, is that Schlitz or is that Schultz or Dooley? Ralph Wilson Sr.
Both of them.
So this is the first year of the next 17-year drought. I don't know. But what I do know is what the Buffalo Bills are doing right now. They're circling a drain at a time when the NFL, they were on top. The Buffalo Bills were darlings. They were doing everything right. And they became so married to that recipe for success that the league has now passed them. And they're still repeating the same mistakes. And by not taking gambles, the risk aversion of trying to, hey, we want to be pragmatic. You know, we don't want to end up in cap hell. We don't want to do this and that, the other thing. You not only missed your best window to win a Super Bowl, but now you can't catch the people who are going to pass you on the way to the Super Bowl. You have to do some real, like, all of a sudden the emperor has no clothes and things are being laid bare. And it turns out Sean McDermott, Brandon Beane, they may not be the superstars we thought they were. It turns out there's other GMs around the NFL who are just as talented. There's other head coaches, defensive coordinators, offensive coordinators who are just as talented as what we have here in Buffalo. There may not be many quarterbacks as talented, though. And that's where, if you have any hope, you hope that somebody reins this madness in and brings some real accountability in here before it's too late. Now, I can't be all doom and gloom because that wouldn't make us the pettiest, hardest drinking Bills podcast. So with that, we get to launch into only the fourth iteration of what is one of my favorite segments of the entire season. And that's punching down on the people who have it worse, somehow worse, than Bills fans right now.
Fuck you both. Your lives are so fucking pathetic. I ran a charity 15K to raise awareness for it, you fucking losers.
I love Shorzy. Shorzy's amazing. I want to start with former Bills wide receiver Stevie Johnson. And no, this doesn't have anything to do with me quote tweeting him and getting a bunch of traction about him caping for Sean McDermott over the last few months, although it could. I could trash him for being, you got to stop defending this coaching staff and on the hill of, I played the game and it's hard and I respect that guy. No. It's on him because he recently tweeted this. Chris, is it on screen for everybody? Yeah, there we go. He's on Twitter celebrating a brand deal with Barefoot Wine. He goes, oh, yeah, the Bills social media team reached out to me and I thought I was getting a call. I thought I was going to get on TV. I thought they were going to put me on stream. And instead, I found out about my brand deal with Barefoot Wine. How the hell does the Rockpile Report podcast and the Cheektowaga Country Club get Montucky Cold Snacks in a brand deal? And the only Bills wide receiver besides Stephon Diggs to post more than 1,000-yard season since 2010 gets stuck with a wine that's only popular among 20-year-old college girls and cheap 50-year-old just like winos.
So Jessica and I on Saturday, we had two of our friends. They wanted to go see Janine Garofalo at Helium, so we went. We had to take Jessica's son to my in-laws, and we're all going to one of Jessica's friend's house for Thanksgiving. And my mother-in-law was like, "Oh, I'm going to bring this wine for Thursday." And Jessica went, "The fuck you are!" And it was a bottle of Barefoot. It was a bottle of Barefoot. And Jessica was like, "Put that back over there. You're not bringing that to my friend's house and embarrassing me with that shitty wine."
So what I love is, as Chris cuts back to my single, the hoity-toity, the high and mighty Stevie Johnson of Buffalo Bills fame has to settle for Barefoot Wine. Meanwhile, Chris, look at it in all of its glory. We have one of the best brand deals going with Montucky Cold Snacks. Chris, I think we won this round. Wouldn't you agree?
Yeah.
I'll drink to that.
That's the same brand. That's the same brand deal that.
Raise them up in the chat. I'll drink with you.
Brand deal that Jack Pardee had with Kevin Gilbride. How about that, Johnny Utah? History will look back on 13 seconds in this Bills era, similar to how history looks back on the early 90s Jack Pardee Oilers with Warren Moon. Now, if you don't remember, if you're too young, Jack Pardee and we all know Kevin Gilbride. He was here. They got in a fist fight on a sideline. That was amazing.
What a time to be alive.
What a pull from Johnny Utah.
I love it. And I love that we somehow, like we talk about people lapping Brandon Beane and Sean McDermott. We've lapped Stevie Johnson in terms of brand awareness. I love it. You know who else has a bad time? Justin Jefferson and all of the other Vikings wide receivers when it comes to dealing with J.J. McCarthy. Chris, this tweet is hilarious. Like it's objectively funny because I think we as Bills fans have gotten used to thinking about like, oh, when our quarterback plays poorly, like we're upset about it and everything's terrible and it could never get any worse than this. Josh Allen had a bad game. Well, I'll tell you what, when you want to talk about bad games, it's rough when you think about what's going on in Minnesota right now. Chris, you want to go ahead and read that tweet for everybody?
Yeah, J.J. McCarthy now ranks 851 out of 852 in EPA per dropback among qualified passers since 2000s per True Media. The only player below McCarthy is Jamarcus Russell.
Imagine being Kevin O'Connell, who decided that I had.
We'll let Darnold walk.
Hang on. I had a Kirk Cousins. No, I don't need him. And then I have a Sam Darnold, and this seems like it's going well. I don't need that. And then I have the opportunity to bring in like, oh, hey, Carson Wentz, but nah, I'm going to kill him behind a shitty game plan and shitty offensive line. J.J. McCarthy, I'm going to make him a first-round draft pick. This has Mac Jones vibes to it. It did when they drafted him, and it does now when I'm seeing these numbers and watching these games. Imagine being Justin Jefferson, knowing that you've been paid millions of dollars to play for this team, and you do not have anyone to get you the football. And that's not going to change anytime soon. When is he going to demand a trade? Is this going to bring the whole thing like around again, where we end up giving a first round pick plus more this offseason to the Minnesota Vikings once again?
I think Minnesota, I don't know their contract situation, but Minnesota can rectify it the same way with Darnold. If Mac Jones is a free agent, you just sign Mac Jones and bench McCarthy. That would be the play, but who knows?
I like as somebody goes, he's worse than Zach Wilson. Jeez. Yeah. Imagine being worse than Zach Wilson. It's almost not conceivable. Also, I love Jeremy Rogers in the comments. I just love commiserating with people who lived through the drought. Brother, that's why we're all here. Right? And that's why we're able to punch down on shitty quarterback play going, oh, you drafted that in the first round? I remember JP Losman. Nobody felt bad for us. I'll never feel bad for you now. No. We are here to punch down on this. I can't wait till Justin Jefferson is demanding a trade and Brandon Beane to save his job after having to fire Sean McDermott swoops in and trades multiple firsts to go get Justin Jefferson and put him with Josh Allen for the last half of his career. And then I think the person who might be down bad the most this week is actually one of the funniest. Jordan Brooks, girlfriend of Bill Belichick, who's decided to get into a public pissing match with Pablo Torre.
It's Hudson.
Brooks, Hudson, it doesn't matter. You're a Jordan with dumb hair and dumb makeup.
How would any 71-year-old look at that woman on screen and go, I got to get me some of that with her dumb selfie, band necklace, and her all-access pass?
I'm not going to lie to you. One of the things that astounds me most about Bill Belichick's personal life after leaving the New England Patriots is the fact that I can't picture him as a guy who didn't suffer anyone. This is a Bill Belichick who did not suffer fools. He didn't suffer reporters. If you copped an attitude with him in an interview or you asked a question the wrong way, Bill Belichick would bite your head off, or he would try to make you look and feel stupid. And yet, here's a guy caping and simping for a 20-something-year-old girl. It just feels weird, and I feel like I'm watching this guy who I thought at one point was Superman. Now he's not only Clark Kent, but he's Clark Kent who can't see, and he's falling down flights of stairs. It's not going well. But here's the best part. Jordan Hudson declares that she's going to sue Pablo Torre. I'm going to sue you for defamation. And Pablo Torre immediately claps back on social media, and they have a back and forth. And here's what I feel. I feel like for the Belichick family, this might actually be the final nail in the coffin for Bill Belichick. Because if you sue Pablo Torre, like everyone's been joking about, wow, the discovery in this case would be crazy. First of all, I want to talk about this. If you sue Pablo Torre, Bill Belichick is going to end up like Michael Scott in The Office, where during that episode, The Deposition, where his diary just ends up being considered evidence and everyone has to take it and read it. This is what's going to happen to Bill Belichick's life if this thing is allowed to go to court and go to discovery. I cannot believe that Bill Belichick would allow this 20-something-year-old woman to do this to him. Chris, can you imagine a world where a control freak like Bill Belichick allows this? Lets this happen.
I mean, I believe there was already a report about Steve Belichick's wife essentially gave a filibuster on North Carolina's campus in front of Belichick and Jordan Hudson on how much of a piece of shit she is and how she's ruining the relationship between Steve and Bill.
See, like, this is the problem. You've made too many enemies now, lady. You can't pursue this. Also, just seeing how happy Pablo Torre was to like come right back at her when she tweeted him. He was like, oh, so I take it you're not coming on the show. Let's talk. Let's get attorneys. Let's go do this thing. It has the feeling of Drake versus Kendrick, where you go, oh no, somebody's about to pick a fight and kick a hornet's nest that they have no idea how this is going to end. They're going to end up publicly blackballed. And I feel like Belichick is going to be the one holding the bag for this. You want to talk about people who have it worse than Bills fans? We may feel bad. We're watching the destruction of an elderly man who's too stupid to know that he shouldn't put all of his fortunes in the hands of a 26, 27-year-old woman.
How about the destruction of somebody that's already 6 feet under? I told you your list sucked of people that have it worse than the Bills. We're gonna go to this right here. This happened within the last week. The O.J. Simpson estate has agreed to pay the family of Ron Goldman $58 million to settle the civil judgment from '97.
They finally paid?
They're finally paying Ron Goldman the money, or the family of Ron Goldman the money that he deserves.
Wow. I didn't know that was still a thing.
Yeah, here, I'll drag it over for you. Look at that.
How is this still ongoing? Also, is that Colonel Sanders?
No, that's Fred Goldman. Ron Goldman's dad.
All right, well, that's insulting. I'm not, I didn't mean, that's accidentally insulting, but also I do that all the time.
Yeah, look at that. It's still it got announced on last Sunday. They agreed to pay the Goldman family $58 million. That's insane.
What would you do with $58 million?
I'd find a new host.
I don't know. Who do you think you could afford? Joe Miller?
I would. What I would do with that $58 million if I got awarded that, I would give all of that for Greg Thompson to retire to Buffalo, and then he would host the show. We'd obviously have to change the name because Greg Thompson obviously does not fit the Rockpile Report brand. We would have to come up with something new, but I would definitely fire you and get Greg Thompson to retire to Buffalo.
You wish you could fire me. It's one of those things. I am the Rockpile Report. I'll do whatever. What movie is that? Where he's like, I am this. You can't fire me.
I think you're talking about a Pete Weber quote for bowling. Who do you think you are? I am.
Who do you think you are? I am. Guys, it's funny because Anthony Prohaska had a tweet just about how, hey, everything about the way that this roster was built is flawed and the Bills need to abandon ship. And you can go follow him, ProAnt, on Twitter. He has this tweet about it, and I see it, and I start to again, ruminate about what that might mean. He's like, the Bills need a wholesale philosophical change. The idea that they can still run the same nickel defense they could when Teron Johnson was special, those days are over. The fact that they can get away with things at the linebacker level, they can't, because Bernard's not Milano. Milano was a one of one, and now he's old, and he's not impactful, and he's just another guy out there on the field. You've reached a point in this iteration of the Buffalo Bills where everything that was special about them is old or injured. And now you're just a bunch of regular Joes. And they go, well, this means that the coach and the GM have to change their philosophies about how they draft, how they scout. I want to ask a question of everybody watching this.
There we go. Johnny Utah. You got it.
Johnny Utah. Yoda. Train yourself to let go of everything you fear to lose. McDermott and Beane are the literal opposite of this philosophy, and everything he does, being risk averse, is counterintuitive and meaningless and manifests their own fears. Johnny Utah, you must have already gotten a leak of my notes for the podcast tonight, because I can't wait to walk down this road and get your thoughts in the comments on this. I want to ask Bills fans a question. How often is it that a head coach and a GM simultaneously enact a wholesale philosophy shift? Whether it's they change their scheme, they change draft strategy, whether they change some of the things about their scouting at a certain position, all of it 10 years into their careers. How often does that happen? The answer is never. It has literally never happened because most GMs don't make it to this point without having attended a Super Bowl. And most head coaches are already fired. Winning GMs and head coaches don't have to change. Head coaches and GMs without a Super Bowl appearance don't survive this long. Unless you're the Mike Brown Bengals with Marvin Lewis, who never existed to win titles. They just padded a bank account. Is that what the Buffalo Bills are? Are we just the Bengals 2.0? And Terry Pagula is our Mike Brown. And we now exist to root and cheer for something that looks shiny and new and fun, right up until it runs out of steam and gets rusty and falls apart. And no one cares because they've already paid these men's salaries, and they're going to look at the contract value and go, well, I can't pay 2 GMs and I can't pay 2 head coaches. So I'm just going to let them ride out the string. And then maybe I'll put some fresh bodies in there, but who's going to hire him, Chris? Who's going to hire him? Terry? You know, Terry's such a great judge of character. He's hired how many great executives for the Buffalo Sabres?
And Pagula Sports and Entertainment that don't end up sleeping with each other. Allegedly.
McDermott parroting his belief in Joe Brady after yet another team comes in and comes out in the media after a game and says the Bills were wildly predictable based on some simple film study. I would call it indefensible, but he can. Sean McDermott can defend that because he's the same type of guy. Predictable, steady, all thumbs when it really matters. Being saved, just like his GM, by their superhuman quarterback, who they get to wear like a bulletproof vest. And I now have to drink and acknowledge the fact that thank God we have Josh, because without Josh, we wouldn't have anything. Josh is literally the rock that this entire church has been built on. I'll drink to that. I think one of the biggest problems with all this is that I care too much. I've invested too much emotionally in all of this. Someone down there, you guys are quoting Breaking Bad. I am the danger. I care about this team a lot. I care about the way these games go because there's something inside me. Like I said, I've talked about it ad nauseum on this podcast. won't be settled until they win one, if only because I watched what it did to my father when they lost one. Not one, but 4. I had to watch my father suffer and labor under that. And it's almost what galvanized my belief in him. Was I was like, well, obviously we both can't die before they accomplish this thing, right? Like, that seems inconceivable. Chris, 100-year span of no Super Bowl? Like, that seems crazy. And yet, here we are. I'm 40. My father is now in his 60s. And I'm starting to question whether or not I can make this. Josh Allen is Anakin Skywalker with the wrong mentor. Exactly. No, it's crazy to me what we've become, what we've allowed ourselves to become, because culture and consistency and ownership just being cheap. I know that my relationship with this team is not healthy for me, but neither is this. And I have zero qualms with that and zero plans to put it down anytime soon. So what are you going to do about it? I was musing about what to do and what the next 5 to 6 years in the tail end of Josh Allen's career looks like. I was thinking back about the 49ers. You know, years ago, the 49ers once employed Jim Harbaugh. And this guy inherited a talented but underperforming roster. And under his tutelage, with his coaching staff and his handpicked coordinators, they created teams that were electric. They were physical in the trenches. They pounded people into dust using their offensive line, defensive line, running backs, and linebackers. He was a hard-nosed coach, and he was demanding. In his first 3 seasons in the NFL, Jim Harbaugh went to 2 conference finals and a Super Bowl.
Also the year we met.
And ultimately, they lost that Super Bowl on the final play. In his 4th year as an NFL head coach, his messaging stopped producing results, and the San Francisco 49ers ownership forced him out. Yeah. That was it. The result, like, that was a result of the conversations about how the team was going to go and the friction that was starting to build, because he thought they should be doing things more to augment the run game. They saw the way the league was going towards the pass. They didn't believe in what his vision for an offense is. And you're seeing that manifest right now in the Chargers. The Chargers led the AFC West for a while, and now where are they?
In Los Angeles.
Yeah, but where are they in the standings? They're right there with the Bills, kind of in that wild card mix.
Well, they were so bad that they had to leave San Diego and go to L.A. That should tell you everything you need to know. Ownership
pushed Jim Harbaugh, on what he was going to do to address the fact that his messaging stopped resonating. And the results of those conversations was his departure from the franchise at the end of the year. The 49ers languished for a couple of years until they fired Trent Baalke, the same GM who created that mess that is the Jaguars right now. And then they hired Kyle Shanahan and brought in John Lynch to be the GM. And since then, they've been to Super Bowls, a pair of conference finals. They're going to make the playoffs this season. Their owner, Jed York, wasn't content to sit and watch the 49ers deteriorate into obscurity with just, hey, we love our coach and he's got a message and he's got a system and we're going to maintain status quo because we might make the playoffs. He made bold moves to recast the team's image and basically recast their future, and the results speak for themselves. Even with waves of injuries, I just watched last night them demolish the Carolina Panthers. They have guys that no one's ever heard of making interceptions, making tackles for losses. Why? Because they draft and develop and draft and develop. Chris, when's the last time you heard of the 49ers making a giant trade?
It's been a while.
Doesn't happen.
Also,
well, Trey Lance, when they traded up.
I was just speaking, if you're talking 49ers, A lot of injuries on the defensive side of the ball, but also they have Robert Saleh.
Well,
there you go. He can scheme shit up.
But here's a question. You have an owner who wasn't happy with the status quo and made a move. You have vision, you have ideas, and here's the problem. He had to cycle through a couple coaches to get to winning. Yeah, they had to suffer a little bit of pain. Imagine what Shanahan and Lynch could do with a quarterback like Josh Allen. If Josh Allen had stayed in California, and if he was the quarterback of the San Francisco 49ers right now, how many Super Bowls would they have? The one Garoppolo lost, for sure. Probably the one Purdy lost them.
Yep.
So 2 wins. They'd probably be leading the NFC West right now. Now imagine that you're rooting for a franchise.
Vita Vegas, Shanahan and McVay hired the same year as McDermott, and they're lapping McDermott.
Yep. Now imagine you're rooting for a franchise that doesn't believe that you as a fan deserve to even dare to dream that such a thing could be possible. That, hey, we're immovable objects. We're here forever. You just have to deal with us. And we should just be happy with the way things are. And this is the status quo. So much that the GM feels empowered to go onto public radio and talk shit to the hosts about what a poor job he's done developing a position that now is playing a major role because your offensive coordinator is doing something you didn't expect as a GM. As a GM, you expected them to funnel the offense through the run, so you put no effort into the wide receiver core. And now it's a problem because you're throwing the ball all of the time because your defense sucks. They're banged up. They're injured. You have to throw to win. And now here we are. I would be insulted as a fan. I would be insulted. I would be incensed. I would be mad at a GM like Brandon Beane trying to propose that he knows better than me, a long-suffering Bills fan, about what it is to, sometimes you win some and you lose some in the offseason. No, I don't know about that. I don't know about that, Brandon, because that's your fucking job. My job is to show up and be loud on game day. Your job is to make sure we have the requisite talent to compete and win and threaten as long as we have an MVP quarterback for a championship. You've done a bad job this year. Chris, where does the accountability come from?
I have no idea.
It's just incredible to see how far this franchise has fallen. We're going to have to play out the string. Like, it's going to happen whether we like it or not. The games will come. They will go. The losses will come. They will go. To quote the late, great Colonel Sanders, since I don't have any more FDR quotes, I'm too drunk to taste this chicken. I feel like that's where all Bills fans are. I can't drink the Kool-Aid anymore. I think a lot of us are waking up to the idea that, hey, maybe we need something different. The problem is until someone at One Bills Drive does, someone in the hierarchy above the current power structure gets involved. Someone outside the culture that's been built gets involved. We're stuck here. The velvet cage. Make yourselves comfortable. I think we're going to be here for a while. It sucks, but at least we have enough Montucky cold snacks to drown a horse. But for tonight, I got to get the hell out of here. I'm Drew Gear. That's Chris Kruger. This has been your Rockpile Report.